If you've ever looked at XRP's chart and thought, why doesn't this behave like anything else in crypto? You're not imagining it. Even people who understand markets, people who've been investing for years, often struggle to make sense of XRP. It doesn't move when you expect it to. It doesn't react the way other assets do. And that creates a lot of confusion. Most investors are trained to look for familiar signals, momentum, breakouts, clear trends. XRP seems to ignore all of that. And because it doesn't fit the usual pattern, people jump to conclusions. They assume something must be wrong, that it's broken, suppressed, or simply left behind. But the truth is, XRP doesn't confuse people because it's failing. It confuses people because it doesn't behave the way they're used to reading markets. And once you understand why, the chart starts to make a lot more sense. Let's put the confusion into words. XRP doesn't pump when the rest of the market gets excited. When Bitcoin runs, when altcoins surge, XRP often just sits there. At the same time, it also doesn't crash the way speculative assets do. It doesn't swing wildly up and down with emotion. So from the outside, it looks disconnected, almost like it's not participating in the same market. That creates frustration. And frustration leads people to force explanations that don't actually fit. Some say it's manipulation. Some say it's dead money. Some say it's a missed opportunity. But those explanations all come from the same mistake, trying to interpret XRP using the same framework you'd use for momentum-driven assets. When you apply the wrong lens, even a well-functioning system looks broken. Most people in crypto are trained on one dominant model: momentum. Assets move because narratives spread. Attention increases. Volume floods in. Price responds. That model works well for speculative assets. It even works for Bitcoin much of the time. But XRP was never designed to thrive on narrative cycles or emotional speculation. So when people expect momentum behavior and don't see it, they assume underperformance. In reality, they're judging a different type of asset by the wrong criteria. It's like evaluating a freight train by how fast it accelerates off the line. That's not what it's built for. Different purpose leads to different behavior. And if you don't account for that, confusion is guaranteed. To understand XRP, you need to understand how markets behave before major structural shifts. Most assets move through three broad phases: distribution, accumulation, and compression. Distribution is loud. Accumulation is quiet. Compression is boring. Compression is where volatility drops. Price trades sideways. Interest fades. And this is where most people lose patience. But compression isn't random. It's a filtering phase. It filters out people who need constant excitement. It filters out short-term thinking. It filters out emotional capital. What remains is positioning. This is where XRP has spent a long time. And that long compression is exactly what makes it hard to read if you're expecting fireworks. XRP isn't just another speculative asset. It's tied to systems where stability matters more than excitement. The type of capital XRP is associated with doesn't chase volatility. It avoids it. Large institutions don't want assets that swing wildly based on sentiment. They want predictability. They want liquidity. They want clarity. That changes how price behaves. Instead of rapid expansions and collapses, you get extended periods of stability, extended compression, extended boredom. To retail investors, that looks like nothing is happening. To institutions, it looks like a system behaving exactly as intended. This difference in perspective is at the heart of why XRP feels so confusing. Here's the uncomfortable part. Intelligence doesn't protect you from using the wrong framework. In fact, smart investors often overanalyze XRP. They layer complex explanations onto a simple mismatch. They compare XRP to Bitcoin. They compare it to meme coins. They compare it to tech stocks. But those assets are driven by entirely different forces. When you compare things that aren't meant to behave similarly, the conclusions will always feel unsatisfying. That's why even experienced investors walk away confused. Not because they lack information, but because they're asking the wrong questions. Here's the reframe that matters. XRP isn't lagging behind the market. It isn't failing to keep up. And it isn't broken. It's operating on a different timeline for a different role. Once you stop expecting it to behave like speculative assets, the chart stops feeling wrong. Sideways movement stops looking like stagnation. Compression stops looking like weakness. Understanding doesn't require predicting price. It requires recognizing structure. And when you do that, frustration is replaced with clarity. You don't have to agree with this perspective, and you don't have to like XRP. But if you're going to evaluate it honestly, you need the right framework. This channel isn't about hype. It's not about price targets or timelines. It's about helping you understand what you're actually looking at, so the market stops feeling confusing. That's what XRP Insights is here for.